No mai haere mai, ko Arnika MacPhail tuku ingoa, he kai whakahaere ahau ki te kapa o GCSN for this hat, and no Ōtautahi ahau. And I'm out in Diamond Harbour and we don't have fibre. So as Kim said, there are some people who don't have a great connection from their homes, and we are one of them. So sometimes I am just not here anymore. So we'll see how we go this morning. I have an amazing opportunity of being program manager for a trust here in Christchurch called the Greater Christchurch Network Charitable Trust. And we've also got an amazing man on the call here, Daniel Hay, who's been supporting our community Wi-Fi project out in Arnott-Neenee. So for me, digital equity, absolutely agree with what everyone has said so far on the call, but for my specific mahi under GCSN, it's about every student in our educational system in New Zealand having access to the education from home. And that's about ensuring that they have Wi-Fi access from home. And as someone mentioned earlier on the call, there's a real misconception, I think it was Sue actually, a misconception around what having access to Wi-Fi means from home. So we did a survey 2 years ago to see who had access, and quite a few parents said they did have access to Wi-Fi, but actually that was data from their phone. So understanding the language around digital equity and what Wi-Fi access in the home is compared to data has been a really important part of our mahi. And then having a device to be able to access the Wi-Fi. So I come from a perspective of the fact that we have a really amazing educational system in New Zealand, and when our konga go into their schools, they can access things like Google Classroom, there's devices there for them, OneNote, whatever that looks like. But then we have some students who may have in the past been straight A students, really engaged in their learning, loved everything they did, to put a lot of effort into their homework when they went home. And as soon as they leave that school, they now cannot access that work anymore. So we have a cohort of students who have previously been really engaged in their education that actually do not have the opportunity. As soon as they walk out of their school, they do not have the opportunity to engage in their education as their classmates might have. So Connected Aranui came out of the census data that 47% of the community in Aranui didn't have access to Wi-Fi from home. And within that 47%, within that community, we recognised that there were 690 students enrolled in our public school system. So it's, there's been some really wonderful initiatives around that digital safety aspect, but a lot of them are online. So we've talked about ensuring that we have the online harm prevention skills in place, but actually if we've got students who are connecting to the internet or not having access to the internet, they still can't access these services. So it's been a really interesting learning curve for us as we've been building Connected Aranui and seeing how we can connect students, what we can do to connect them, but also what services that they have access to, because that's a really important part of this mahi. So you imagine for a young teenage girl who's always been really engaged in her learning, and all of a sudden there's conversations happening at school, she's going in and she's hearing about all these things that she doesn't have access to at home. Students are far ahead of their work because she doesn't have access to the internet from home. And then she's too embarrassed to actually say, it's because I don't have a connection at home, or yes, my parents bought a device, but it was stolen, or my older brother needed it, or dad needed it for his new job. As Stuart said, we had previous to COVID, and I know these numbers have changed a bit, but when we started this pilot, we had 115,000 students in 55,000 homes who didn't have access to the internet at home. So if you're a kaiako out in one of our schools, that's 1 in 8 of our students enrolled in our public schooling system. So you imagine if you've got 40 kids sitting in front of you and all of them have access, that means that in another class, you have got students that don't have access to the internet from home. So we've been working really hard over the last 2 years, but in the third and final year of the Connected pilot. This is the solution is chorus access points on telephone poles out in Aranui. Unfortunately, the solution isn't a equitable solution, as in we have the quantity there, but it's not great quality for everyone. So my dream, my 2 years from now, is that we have some really great solutions in place that are actually built from the community up. I did set my timer to make sure I don't go over my 5 minutes there, Cheryl, being the good girl that I am. So yeah, my dream is that actually we have these pilots in place, there we go, but they're built from the community up. So one key thing I just want to add before I stop is that we did find with this pilot that we turned the access points on. It was really exciting. Students all of a sudden had access to this Wi-Fi and no one connected. So that's where Daniel Hay has come in as our whānau IT connector through the Aranui Community Trust. So these solutions are absolutely about that kanohi ki te kanohi part, that face-to-face value of ensuring that we're building those relationships and building that trust with the communities that we're supporting with Wi-Fi. So that was about a 45-minute talk in 5 minutes. So if you want more information about that, I'll pop a link. We created a how-to guide to get community Wi-Fi started. So I'll pop that into the chat.